Yeah.
Peace be upon you all.
We-
Spaceship submitters are about to launch. Whoever's on board, you're going to get yourself a lot of credit. Just so you
Thank
know.
you.
Praise be to God.
Praise God. Praise God.
I seek refuge in God from Satan rejected. God's mercy. 427. God wishes to redeem you, while those who pursue their lust wish that you deviate a great deviation. God wishes to lighten your burden for the human beings created weak. Murder, suicide, illicit gains prohibited. O you who believe, do not consume each other's properties illicitly. Only mutually acceptable transactions are permitted. You shall not kill yourself. God is merciful towards you. Anyone who commits these transgressions maliciously and deliberately will condemn him to hell. This is easy for God to do. If you refrain from committing the gross sins that are prohibited for you, we will remit your sins and admit you an honorable admittance, men and women endowed with unique qualities. You shall not covet the qualities bestowed upon each other by God. The men enjoy certain qualities, and the women enjoy certain qualities. You may implore God to shower you with His grace. God is fully aware of all things. Do not object to the inheritance law proposed by God. For each of you, we have designed shares from the inheritance left by parents and the relatives, also those related to you through marriage. You should give them their due share. God witnesses all things. I have no comments about listening.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any comments?
Any comments? Any questions? Taslim, what do you got?
Peace be upon you, good
Oh my God.
soldiers of God. I got a lot of actually good questions. Hold on, we turn this thing down a little bit. So, verse 27, God wishes to redeem you, while those who pursue their lust wish that you deviate a great deviation. Wow. And look at the next verse, followed. It says, God wishes to lighten your burden. So God wishes to redeem the human beings, and God wishes to lighten our burden. And my question is, why is it that we want to be so grounded and we want to deviate? Thank God for his mercy, but why is it that we want to be so heavily grounded to this earth and pursue our own lusts and deviation? Is there a disease in the human brain? Why
Thing
is it that
is,
yeah,
thing
go ahead.
is, we don't know what we wanna know, and we think we know. But when you realize when you don't know, this when you realize you don't know. All of it ends, but they never remember that they're gonna die. They just remember that today they just wanna have a better car, nicer house, so they can just show it to other people, not even for themselves. They don't. It's like pride is something different. I feel like pride is above all of the other sins. Pride, pride will make you think wrong is right. Pride will make you think bad
Mm.
is good. And I
All
don't
right.
know.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's two aspects to this. One, human nature, right? That wants the easy way, wants instant gratification, and another one is that Satan whispers to him, sort of amplifies that. That's that's what we have to fight, right? That's how we become great. That's how we become righteous by striving in God's way, right? By obeying His commandments and seeking to pleasure Him, right? And I think it's like I said, it's two aspects to this, and that's what we have to fight. We have to fight our loss. We have to fight our greed, and I think in all of us, there's the good qualities and the bad qualities, but it's also that Satan is trying to amplify the bad things. And we have to seek to amplify the good things by seeking guidance and help from God. What do you guys think about this idea in here, talking about 427 to, for people who want to pursue their lost? What do you think about that, dude?
I think what's interesting is I'm trying to think who we had this discussion not too long ago. Anytime someone chases a vanity of this world, thinking that they're gonna get joy and happiness from it, what ends up inevitably happening is they go down that path, they get what they desired, only to find out that it doesn't fill that void they were looking to fill, and then that leads them more depressed post facto than they were before. They did these studies with like Olympic athletes, and what they find is that they work so hard, so diligently to, in essence, perform that when you look at gold medalists, silver medalists, bronze medalists, post facto, they end up they get a slump, depressed actually, because they work so hard for this achievement, they get it, and it doesn't give them that ultimate satisfaction that they were looking for. The only thing that has the capability of giving us true contentment, true satisfaction is our relationship with God. Everything else is just empty calories. It never nourishes. The example I heard that I really liked, it's like drinking salt water. It gives the illusion that it's quenching your thirst, but it's actually making you more thirsty.
I would say this example that you said about drinking, basically salty water is the perfect example for this case, right? We seek, a lot of wealth, right? We seek, sort of relationship outside marriage and all these things. If you go down that path, right, you get that instant gratification, but it does not make you content, and it will leave you depressed. And I've seen it again and again with many people, right? They seek wealth, they attain it, and they just, they lose their mind because they just don't find that contentment that they were looking for. And like you said, the contentment, the true happiness is only with God, right? No matter how much, wealth you're seeking, no matter how much this and that and worldly desires that you're seeking, it will never be enough. And you will just seek to gain more. Um, Whereas, just like you said, the true contentment only comes from God. So we have to always try to pursue Him instead of anything else. Does anyone else have any comments regarding these verses?
Yep.
Well,
There's-
I feel like we've been programmed since kids that materials over and over materials, and then like what do you expect? All your life you're hearing, you just gotta work hard, you just gotta it's not even about God sometimes. It's just work hard, work hard, work hard, work hard. What's the end of it? Like they forget that the only truth is death. They forget that. So they're not happy today. They're fighting for something for tomorrow, and when they even get it, they'll never feel happy.
Yeah, true.
That's it. People been programmed like this. I don't think you can change it. That's it.
True.
I wanted to share a verse. So in 53:48, it reads, "He is the one who makes you rich or poor." This is the translation. In Arabic, the word for rich is ghani. Ghani means someone who's free from need. In that you could be a billionaire, and if you're still needy, you're not ghani. The word here that's used for poor is aghana, which means someone who's, in essence, made satisfied. And this is the only entity in the entire, universe and beyond that has the capability of making someone free from need and satisfied is God alone. If we chase any other entity thinking that that's going to give us, again, make us free from need or satisfied, it's only an illusion. And that's the things like when it says the devil's promise is an illusion, this is how I understand it. The devil makes people think like, look, you do these things, these worldly things to get the satisfaction. You're going to be free from need. You're going to be satisfied. And you're not. And we have this example in the Quran, Surah 68, of the people in their garden. These are individuals. They worked diligently. They got up early in the morning. They tended to their garden, and they were so absolutely sure that they were going to reap a harvest, that they're never going to be poor again, that they're going to be satisfied. And God caused their entire harvest to get wiped out. And the reason to understand is like you say, oh, that's a cruel, kind of a lesson. If this saves those people, they go through the short-term pain, but for all of eternity, they have that instance to basically make that realization that it's only God alone who provides someone the ability to be free from need and to be satisfied. It's a good lesson to have, despite all the loss they temporarily had to deal with.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you just said. Does anyone else have any comments? Peace be upon everyone that is joining. We're reading from 427 to 433. If anyone has any comment, we would love to hear it.
Anyone want to add anything? I don't want to keep ranting.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting if you read the subtitle. It says murder, suicide, and illicit gains prohibited.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, how does Rashad get murder out of the verse? Because it says, "O you who believe, do not consume each other's properties illicitly. Only mutually acceptable transactions are permitted. You shall not kill yourselves. God is merciful towards you." So it's like it doesn't say anything in this, directly about murder, but it's there. I'm curious if anyone has any insight to how this connection was made.
Well, I think if you when it says you shall not kill yourselves, right? It refers both to murder and suicide, right? Because we treat the entire sort of society as a human body, right? So if I kill a member of my community, it's as if I kill one of ourselves, right? At the same time, if I kill myself, right, I've killed one of ourselves. So I feel like that's how that connection was made to extract that it's both murder and suicide. What do you think?
So I see it exactly the same way, and this is an expression in Arabic, "qatalu nafsakum," to kill yourselves in the context of killing each other. If you look like I loaded up the verse 285, and it's used repeatedly throughout the Quran. It says, "Yet here you are killing each other, evicting some of you from your homes, banding against them sinfully and maliciously." And if you read the literal Arabic, it's saying that they're doing this to themselves. So, when we're, it says, "Do not kill yourselves." You're 100% right that this constitutes both suicide and, murder.
Yeah, I understand it just like you do. It's very interesting. Um, yeah, I mean, these are some of the horrible crimes we see, basically murder, suicide, illicit gains. And I think regarding the illicit gains is very important. I usually don't see a lot of focus on basically making sure the money that you're gonna make, right, is earned through righteous ways. And I see it again and again. When people grow up, and they struggle with the money, they resort to not so good ways, by scamming people, doing unrighteous acts. And that's not focused enough. And I think one of the true qualities of a believer is that they have to make sure the money that, they earn, right, their source of income is a righteous source of income, basically. That's something just to remember. I don't see enough it being enough focus. But yeah, that's something to remember. Okay. We also have men and women endowed with unique qualities. That's true. That's very true for today's generation that they talk about, oh, men and women are the same. They're not the same. We're equal, but we're different. That's something we have to always remember that, each one of us were given different qualities, different privileges, in different areas. Not to say anyone is better than the other gender, but rather, their functions are different, but yet we are the same, and we have to respect and love each other and work together through the betterment of society and worshiping God alone. What do you guys think about this? Men and women endowed with unique qualities. Any comments regarding this?
Yeah, I think it's
Sunflower
really
said,
interesting. Oh.
go ahead, Nabi.
Yeah, I just wanted to say peace be upon everybody. Welcome back to the submission server. We're doing the Quran study now. We read the verses from chapter 4, verse 27 to 33. For anyone not following along, it's in the chat, VC1-chat. Questions about men and women endowed with unique qualities. This is really important. 434, and I really appreciate with the verse that we're stopped off at 33. That's really good. 432 says that you shall not covet the qualities bestowed by each other. The men enjoy certain qualities and the women enjoy certain qualities. To me, I compare this to apples and oranges. I don't say an apple is better than an orange. I don't say an orange is better than an apple. They have different functions, different qualities, but they're both sweet, right? So they provide nutritional value. They're just different in their composition and their contribution to society. And so this is what comes up a lot when people try to talk about, men and women equality. We should have this and that. It's like, it's not about being equal or not equal. It's about respecting and acknowledging the qualities of man and the qualities of women. So this is really important. And it says we shouldn't covet each other's qualities. So we should just try to be the best version of who we are. I think this is really important to recognize. And unfortunately, we're seeing a shift in society trying to impose feminine qualities on men and trying to impose male qualities on women, while also telling the men to decrease their male abilities and also telling the women to decrease their female abilities. And this causes an imbalance of the equilibrium and actually disrupts society. And one example of this is the Scandinavian countries, where they forced gender roles to be destroyed to the point of really pushing them to go across, opposing their natural desires. And what happened was, even in spite of that, you still had the women going towards careers that they wanted. For example, they still wanted to become nurses, whereas the men wanted to become engineers. So we cannot force this on society. There's just certain things. Obviously, this is speaking generally. It doesn't encompass every single individual. However, on an overall basis, you're just not going to see as many bricklayers that are women. It's just not in their nature. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is, in my opinion, this happens when they want to re-engineer God's system, God's creation, right? They're not happy with the fact that we're different. They want to morph the entire society into, I'm a shark, I'm a furry, I'm a woman, I'm a bird, right? They
They
want
want to
to
challenge
make
it.
what?
They want to challenge it.
Yeah, they just don't like the traditional understanding the way it has been for thousands of years, right? They're seeking to make the society deviate from the original sort of understanding of genders and their gender roles, unfortunately. And that's what happens, we see them trying to morph these things, like twist it in a very sick way, and it doesn't end up well, right? I've seen many documentaries in many cities, for example, in San Francisco, that is like one of the capitals of such LGBTQ stuff. And you go and like you look into the city, it's just horrible. Horrible scenes of men dressing like women, women dressing like men, being naked. It's just horrible. This is what happens when you go outside of God's kingdom into Satan's kingdom and you try to change his creation. It just will not work, and it will have a bad ending for everyone at the end of the day.
What's interesting, but then physicians, it seems like physicians are dominated by women. So, and it's not to say that physicians are bad. That's a highly coveted and looked upon position in society, is being a physician. So this is generally, and Sister Monica had a comment that says women cannot be engineered. Of course, anyone can be anything they want. That's not the discussion. The discussion is you cannot force women to be engineers, and you cannot force men to be nurses. Anyone can be anything they want, but we cannot force people to go for or go against gender roles. I think that's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this example. I study software engineering, and our class is just like dominated by men. It's 10 to 1, but I see many girls that are really, really interested in the field, and they do much better than other men, right? So there's no problem, right? It's just what we're trying to tell you is that you can't force women to into these degrees that they don't want to go into, right? And I've seen an example of it back home in my country, in Iran, where these engineering fields, especially computer science, is dominated by women because they don't let them to go to other fields. It's sort of forced upon them. And more than like 50 to 60% of classes are dominated by women in computer science courses. But yet, what we see when they enter workforce, a lot of these women just don't enter the industry because they're not into it. They were not designed for it. They didn't like it in the beginning. And what ends up is that even though there were less number of men who were in the classes, there's most of the people in the industry in the industry and the programmers and all that will end up to be men because they like it. They like to sit behind a computer 10 hours a day. But the women that were forced into it, they didn't like it. And I see it again and again with a lot of relatives of mine. Just went to computer science because they find it interesting, kind of forced into it too. At the end of the day, they didn't like it. And they didn't find a job regarding it. Right? They had to pursue a different career and just they wasted 4 years, 5 years of their lives. That's what we were saying. You should not force people into different categories. That's it. If anyone wants to become an engineer, if a woman wants to become an engineer, go ahead. Most welcome. If a man wants to be a nurse, they're most welcome. Go ahead, do it. No problem. It's just that it should not be forced and promoted by the people that know we want half of the engineers to be women. That's just a ridiculous idea, and it's not going to work out.
If I could
There's a
add
verse in
something.
Quran that says where most of the people go at, like where like the majority goes, they're just gonna jump themselves off the bridge. So, and most of the people are scared to not be a part of the majority, so they'll jump with them without thinking.
I wanted to share a slightly different kind of a perspective on this. I think about it regarding parenting. It's funny. So, me and my wife, we have 2 kids, and our parenting styles are fundamentally different. Where if our kid falls and gets a boo boo, mom comes and is comforting them and is like kissing them and this and that, and I'm like, get up, walk it off. And the aspect is, it's like, it's easy to criticize each other. I can say, hey, you're being too soft. She can criticize me for being too harsh. It's this balance that's needed, right? The kid needs to kind of have both sides. If they're pampered too much, they're gonna have challenges to overcome, and if they're not given enough sympathy, they're gonna have challenges to overcome. And what's funny is, a lot of times I feel like in school and in life, like things are gearing more towards the feminine side. When someone is acting in a masculine manner, they get reprimanded for it. That someone sees a father do something like that and be like, "Oh, that guy's, he's non-compassionate." And realistically, I mean, the idea behind that is, no, I want to strengthen my child. I don't want them to think that, if they just get the slightest ouchie, that they can't tend for themselves. And these are the kind of stuff that I see, that it's like it's important that there's this a balance, and things that in essence we should celebrate rather than reprimand.
Our sister Liza asked a question. She says, Salam, regarding murder versus suicide subheading, is it possible that it also refers to people who pay others to kill because they are afraid to do it themselves? So murder is on the killer, suicide is on the person who wanted to die. Sounds a bit far-fetched. You only see it in movies, but in today's world it's possible, right? If you pay someone to kill somebody, you are committing murder. That is murder. It's no different than you pulling the trigger on the gun. You see, so it's still murder.
I'll give a interesting take on this. I think there's a connection, and I might be reading into this, where it talks about only mutually acceptable transactions. The aspect is like, look, war is not necessarily murder. If two parties basically agree that, hey, they're going to go to war, they know that the price of war is the possibility of death. Right? It's a serious thing. Then you have in the context mercenaries, people who have no vested interest in the fighting, but in essence are hired in essence to do the war on behalf of the party. I would say that the person who's being hired as a mercenary is a murderer in that context because they're getting paid to do it. I don't think this is so much like in the context of assassins and stuff, but I could see that connection between, again, war and the hiring of mercenaries.
All right. If anyone else has any comment,
I
otherwise,
want to.
go ahead.
Oh, Evis, were you going
I
to say
just want to
something?
make sure we got Sunflower had a
Yes,
question.
yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Brother,
Peace be upon you, everyone. So, about the gender roles and like what the society of today is pushing on this subject, I was gonna say this was tried in many countries before, you know, and I put like on the VC1 Dust chat. I put like a picture from my country's Albania square. Like there's a huge portrait of a woman, you know, leading men in battle or something like that. Like a woman in my country, Albania, were during socialist or communist dictatorship, had like a big change of role coming from, you know, secular, in a way, government where like woman was oppressed, and um, getting out there, you know, in this new era of communism slash socialism ruling, that woman would be able to do anything that man does and even do it better. And this has been tried for like 10 years. And what happened was it was a complete disaster, that because they did this for so long that women completely, you know, like the gender roles were completely reversed. So the women became almost like men, and they taking all these men's positions, and they just like the society almost collapsed. So this is like, I think, because it was also like in communism is a godless society, right? Like
parents, especially people with religious values or
scriptural values, and kids grow up thinking that the parents don't understand them, and it's almost like
an attack both on the family unit and on religion. It makes people turn from God because they perceive God from Scripture as being intolerant and not loving. It's a very powerful attack on the nuclear family, on society as a whole, when you start manipulating children to start to believe that what their biology is somehow what they are not. And up here, it's extreme. And I agree with the gentleman that was just talking that this has been used before on societies, and it causes great destruction. But by having the children, you know, estranged from their parents, who becomes their role model? The state, right? So it's very dangerous things are happening. So when God says, "No, don't covet the qualities we bestowed upon each of you," you know, and men and women have each distinct qualities. That's just the way it is. And I think it's very important that we be very clear, and because this kind of ideology where you're messing with children, and now in Canada, for example, if a child says, "I believe I'm the opposite gender," if a parent tries to change their mind, they can be put in prison, which is what happened up here in Canada already. And they immediately start talking about transition surgeries. And we also have verses in the Quran talk about the devil commands them to alter the creation of God. And I mean, changing what God made you is clearly altering your creation, in my opinion. But so anyways, it's very important, I believe, inshallah, to, as God says, we gave men and women with distinct qualities, and we shouldn't cover each other's qualities, but we do respect each other, obviously. It's just the way God made us. And I just wanted to end it with that.
I think I have a comment. In the 70s and here in America. And, you know, if you think about it, what did women want to be liberated from? And I think maybe this still goes on, is that men like to, in the home, it's always a common complaint that the man thinks the woman should clean up after him, and that they're responsible for this upkeep of the man. And they wanted to be liberated from that. And I personally, I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, I think that it's kind of, I mean, is it a woman's nature to clean, you know, clean up and be responsible for that? So here's what's happening now. We have women who are entering the workforce because they can, maybe whatever field they want to get in. But then in the home, there's this idea that they're responsible for keeping the place clean. And I don't think that's fair, personally. I think this is superimposed on the women that they're the cleaners. Why? What is it and her nature that inherently makes her the cleaner? You know, so this liberation is sometimes just the sense of fairness in the home.
Agreed, and it's gone. But what's today is it's something different. It's been morphed into something else. But I agree with you with what it was before. But today it is definitely clearly something different.
Peace be upon you all. Mashallah, interesting discussion. Thank God for this study. Just while I'm remembering, I plan to be away from the chat. I wanted to share a few comments. First, on the earlier discussion on people kind of chasing worldly things. Mashallah, I thought good comments were made. And I just wanted to add that, if we look at it from the perspective of God has given us this knowledge that the real person is the soul, it's not the body. People are chasing the material things, which is nice for the body, but the real person is the soul. So the only way that the real person can be happy is by nourishing and purifying the soul. So it makes sense, like God's system from that perspective of when we're worshiping God alone and nourishing our souls through the practices and righteous works and reading and studying God's word, commemorating God, all these things, the real person gets nourished and purified and becomes happy. And there's no way that by doing things with the body that can happen because they're separate entities. On on the murder and suicide, I agree. I just wanted to mention that I looked at the Corpus Quran and the yourselves and do not kill yourselves. Actually, I think Brother Dude mentioned it's an nafsakum. It's masculine plural, second person masculine plural, possessive pronouns. So it makes sense to me that that's why it's like not killing yourself and also not killing each other, like not killing those among you. So the grammar supports that, it being plural. And then regarding the gender roles, I mean the verse, yeah. So God's system is beautiful that women are the only ones that can have children and breastfeed, and so God has made the men the bread earners because it's the women that can do that, and if they have that responsibility, it can be hard to work. Thank God, though, it doesn't say that women cannot work. It's just they don't have that responsibility. And there's different, we know that the biology, the physiology is different. The hormones are different somewhat. And it's the men that have, based on that physiology and hormones, it's the men that in general have more of the physical strength. Again, there may be exceptions, but in general, men have more of the physical strength and women have the other qualities, the feminine qualities, and overall their system, the way that women are created, it lends itself better to being nurturing and caring for children. And so thank God that it's a beautiful system, and it's good to know and appreciate our qualities, and like the verse says, ask God to shower us with his grace. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sister Fari. Peace be upon you and peace be upon everyone else as we're just moving along. We're in chapter 4. We read from 427 to 433. We have another 22 minutes to discuss these verses and any other verses we read. And then after that, we can do the second half of the Quran study. We can open it up to the discussion. Sister Sunflower, it seems you have a question. Is it related to the verses that were read? If so, can you come up and ask your question? And if not, you can ask it in 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's related to the verses.
Please go ahead, ask your question. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so when it comes to suicide, this is like something that made me more inclined to reject hadith because there's so much contradictory hadiths, like opposing what the Quran says about this subject. So I just wanted to know, like, what is your opinion on that when it comes to suicide? Like, for example, traditional Islam saying that when a person commits suicide, they go to hellfire forever, right? When it's like, if you're a believer and you committed suicide, Allah, like, we had the understanding that Allah forgives the believers even if they spend a certain amount of time in hellfire, right? So it's kind of like contradicting. Those two things are contradicting each other. So I just wanted to know what your opinion is on that. Do you think that suicide is, something like the verse says you will abide in hell, but is that like an eternal punishment if you died as a believer?
That's a really good question. So the question is, if you die over the age of 40 and you commit suicide, are you condemned to hell eternally? First of all, let's just make clear, we read in the Quran that if you do end up in hell, it is eternal. So that's very clear in the Quran. There's many, many verses that back that up. It consistently tells us that hell is not a temporary location, and repeatedly it's discussed that no, this is a permanent place of residence. So we can just get that out of the way. If the brothers and sisters can load those verses, we can get that squared away. Now, if you commit suicide over the age of 40, I believe that if you do that, there's something wrong. And this is not the quality of a believer. I would question this person even being a believer. We could say that, but doing such a horrendous thing would actually constitute disbelief in God. And so I wouldn't be comfortable calling such a person a good believer. And I believe God is doing everything. God is in control of all things. And so if such a person is in fact a believer, they would never contemplate suicide, especially over the age of 40. That's my understanding.
I'm just curious.
Also, I'd say that go ahead, sister.
No, I was just curious why the age of 40 was being factored into the scenario.
Yeah, so in the Quran, chapter 46, verse 15, it sets for us the age of 40 as the age of decision. We can load this in the verse. Oh, somebody already loaded it. Let's read the verse. 46:15. We enjoin the human being to honor his parents. His mother bore him arduously, gave birth to him arduously, and took intimate care of him for 30 months. When he reaches maturity and reaches the age of 40, he should say, "My Lord, direct me to appreciate the blessings you have bestowed upon me and upon my parents, and to do the righteous works that please you. Let my children be righteous as well. I have repented to you. I am a submitter." So we see in this verse that the age of 40 is the age of decision. It's the age of responsibility, meaning that this is when you make a statement. This is when you make an ultimate decision, to basically decide to be with God or not to be with God. Before the age of 40, you can go through different things. You struggle through different things. If you commit sins, you see the result of your sins in this life. But in terms of eternal life, once you reach the age of 40, you see the consequences of your actions in this life. But if you persist in that path over the age of 40 until the time of death, then you will be in an eternal state in terms of the result of your overall decisions and actions. Does that make sense?
I
So are you saying that if somebody kills themselves before the age of 40, that the result would be different in the hereafter?
I'm saying that if you do anything under the age of 40, you're just not responsible. I mean, you're not responsible as in, it's like an animal. It's like if a bear goes and kills a bunch of people, right? So we condemn all bad behavior and we tell everyone no one should commit any crime at any point. And it's important to note that I think over 90% of attempted suicides are end up in failure. I think it's 90%. So even the suicide that is attempted is controlled by God. You know, you could try to commit suicide, and if God does not will it, it doesn't happen. In chapter 6 and other chapters, it mentions that we are living a predetermined lifespan, a lifespan that is only known to Him. So we cannot change what is determined for us. We can try to do things, but if God doesn't will it, we cannot. So the best option is to follow God's commandments and never try to deliberately commit any of the sins that He outlined for us in the Quran.
I could
I
add
was
some.
just going to add. Okay. You know, I was just going to say the mechanism for the irreversibility of health. I think it's explained in the notion of soul growth and how we have to our souls to the point to where we can withstand being near God. And so the individual that doesn't develop their soul, they escape of their own free will to hell. From the inferno of the immense energy of God's presence. And so it's just simply they don't have enough development to be in heaven. So going to hell, this is the only place, by the way, where we can develop our souls. You know, we're doing it now, and this will be forever. The amount of soul growth. That's why it's so important to go towards the righteous deeds and to do everything you can, because you're going to need it. It's forever. You're going to need all of this soul growth.
Can I jump in for a second? Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Sana. I just wanted to add that a lot of, unfortunately, the suicide rates have really gone up, and there's a lot of very young people committing suicide and or trying to commit suicide. And I think something important is, you know, we don't really know in our communities who is suicidal, who isn't. And I think it's important also to factor in that because we don't want, you know, young people thinking, well, I'm below 40, this is a great way out of my situation. Those thoughts may go through people's heads when they are in especially difficult times. And, you know, it's really not that simple. First of all, there's a lot of people who try to do that and they just end up harming themselves physically. There's many suicide attempts that fail and people are sort of left with health conditions afterward. And in the end of the day, God determines when you will leave Earth. It's really not even up to any one of us. And so plenty of people may try, but it's really not. And yeah, I think it's good if we kind of talk about it with it in mind that there may be people in our communities who are sort of thinking about that. And then the only other thing I wanted to add is I thank you, brother, for the comment about really developing your soul. I think ultimately, if you're a believer, then a big part of that is belief in the hereafter. So you know, no matter what you're going through, there is an end to it, and this life is not your ultimate life. So no matter how bad it is, this is a short life. And so listen to God's words in the Quran about that and believing Him. I believe if you really believe that, you might consider it. You might be going through great hardship, but ultimately you'll put your trust in God, and it may be a test, right? You know, life is really hard. People might have these thoughts. I don't think it's the devil will whisper to you. I don't think you're, I think it's a more complicated and nuanced conversation. I as opposed to just, hey, under 40 you can try and then you'll go to heaven. Like, there's a lot of people really suffering, and I think we have to be delicate with this conversation.
Beautifully said. I wanted to share a couple verses. Make sure I got the right ones loaded up. Okay. Surah 10, verse 64 through 66. It's talking about the believers. It says, "For them, joy and happiness in this world as well as in the hereafter. This is God's unchangeable law, such as the greatest triumph. Do not be saddened by their utterances. All power belongs to God. Is the here, the omniscient. Absolutely to God belongs everyone, the heavens and the earth. Those who set up idols beside God are really falling nothing. They only think they are falling something, only guess." I mean, the takeaway I have from these verses is, at the end of the day, what people want is they want contentment, they want happiness, they want peace. God is saying that if you embrace the religion, you have all this in this world and in the hereafter. There's no point in the sense of saying like, oh, okay, I'll have it in the hereafter, I'm going to suffer now. It's like God's saying, the option's here for us now, that we can grow and develop our souls. God willing, really make it to the highest echelons in the hereafter for all of eternity. It's a huge blessing. I mean, if we're on this chat right now, we're talking about the words of God in the Quran. God has given us a ticket for a perfect happiness now and forever.
MashaAllah, some great comments, and good to hear you, Sana, on here. MashaAllah. I just wanted to add, and so it's like a good reminder, like what Brother Dude said, to be steadfast, and once we pass our tests, then of course it's a lifelong test, so we still need to stay on God's path and do our part. At the same time, it's such a blessed path, and as we go along, things get better and easier, and God blesses more and more. I wanted to just highlight a couple of things on this verse. Part of that is that this, we had the discussion about both murder and suicide being mentioned, that the phrase that only mutually acceptable transactions are permitted, that also supports that killing someone is usually not a mutually acceptable transaction. And then the following verse 30 says, "Anyone who commits these transgressions maliciously and deliberately, we will condemn him to hell." So it seems like intentions are important, and ultimately God is the judge. God is the one that decides. At the same time, this is one of the, we see in the next verse, is one of the gross sins, and so we don't want to risk that. And the more we know, the higher responsibility. When we read the Quran, when we know God is saying this is prohibited, then that comes also with a responsibility. Wanted to add that. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm debating. We got 8 minutes. It would be good to continue reading, but I don't think we're going to be able to do justice unless we expand the conversation towards the verses if we continue reading. I don't know what you guys think.
I have a question. So which part are we? Like, is it still in the first hour? Because I confuse the times.
Yeah. We're still. So we got 8 more minutes before we open it up to more general.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm game to read more. Someone's asking in the chat regarding the next verse, but it's going to be a longer conversation.
Yeah, it's the most controversial verse in the Quran.
Damn.
If you guys want to jump into it, I'm game.
That's
we
a
got
huge.
the thing is we
Is
could
that what we
talk.
want? Do we want to? I mean, do you guys wanted to get into that topic? I guess it's kind of been imposed on us at this point. So what should we do? Should we just
I
do it
mean,
then?
I think it would be good for the post Quran study talk too. It's a very interesting topic to talk about.
Yeah, the
I'm curious.
problem is this. The problem is this. I think it's going to be a debate into the translation. So is that a debate we want to have? We want to debate the Arabic at the
Yeah,
Quran study? What do you
Sunshine
guys
is
think?
You can debate the Arabic. You can debate all of it. But I think in all
Usually
detail.
we didn't question the translation during the Quran study. That was
Yeah.
usually our policy. We left it for after the Quran studies. But
Yeah.
do you think?
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
you
kind
guys,
of.
I would say Sunshine is new here. We could just talk about that verse real quick. Gotta explain it
Is that her
briefly.
question? I didn't get it.
I would like to, and I assume that she's referring to the continuation.
I didn't see what she wrote.
You can check it
Oh
as
no,
a.
she's talking about the age of 40, brother,
Oh, my
not
bad.
the wife beating.
My
Yeah,
bad.
you're talking about the wrong thing. Yeah, we can talk about age of 40 more. Maybe we can even take a look at the appendix. Oh, Sunshine. I'm sorry, I got her mixed up with.
Yeah, I told you. She
Okay,
said.
let's do it. All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's load the next verse and the footnote. No problem. I got it mixed up with the other sister. I apologize. I got it mixed up with Sunflower.
So we
All right,
got.
I got 434. I can do this. No problem. 1 second, please. Give me like 1 second. So I'm loading the verse.
I think Brother Dude is doing this. Okay, no, he's good.
I already
Perfect.
loaded the verse.
All right.
And
Should I
then I'm
read?
loading the footnote. You want? I can read also.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Do not beat your wife. The men are made responsible for the women, and God has endowed them with certain qualities and made them the bread earners. The righteous women will cheerfully accept this arrangement, since it is God's commandment, and honor their husbands during their absence. If you experience rebellion from the women, you shall first talk to them. Then you may use negative incentives like deserting them in bed. Then you may, as the last alternative, beat them. If they obey you, you are not permitted to transgress against them. God is most high supreme. Footnote on this. God prohibits wife beating using the best psychological approach. For example, if I don't want you to shop at Market X, I will ask you to shop at Market Y, then at Market Z, then as a last resort at Market X. This will effectively stop you from shopping at Market X without insulting you. Similarly, God provides alternatives to wife beating, reasoning with her first, then employing certain negative incentives. Remember, the theme of this surah is defending the women's rights and countering the prevalent oppression of women. Any interpretation of the verses of this surah must be in favor of the women. This surah's theme is protection of women. And if I could just very briefly say that on this one, the dispute is not regarding whether the word is beat or not beat. The issue is that we believe that God prohibits wife beating because there are three steps. We believe step 1 and step 2 will definitively resolve the situation if they are upheld correctly and in light of the entire Quran. That's our understanding, and that's the general overview. Thank you. Go ahead, whoever wants to ask a question. Maybe Sister Sunshine, do you want to come and comment on that, or somebody else?
Well, what was the question specifically?
There
I
was
didn't
not a
catch that.
specific question. They were asking about 434.
Okay.
We can linguistic. There was a brother Milad is asking about the linguistic aspect. We can get into that too, but I wanted to make sure that everyone had the overall gist of the verse in terms of how we understand it. If we are all on the same page in terms of where we stand, and then we can talk about aspects of it and the components involved, and then also if we need to get into the linguistics, we can get into that too. So does anyone have any a general comment about the verse that was read and the footnote associated?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about it a little bit, if that's okay. So it's very interesting because the the words that are used are really important, I think, to pay attention to. And the verse says, if you experience rebellion from the women. So this is a really strong word, that this is in this kind of situation where a woman is rebelling. And even then, even in that extreme situation, God is saying, first talk to them. Then you may use negative incentives, like deserting them in bed. And so God gives alternatives. And that, like the footnote says, is actually more effective. If you just tell someone, don't do this, they may very well still do it. They say, well, this is all I know. This is what I know to do. And so, but if you give them alternatives, then that's going to be much more effective in preventing, because now they've got other things that they can resort to in that situation. And then even then, the end of the verse is, if they obey you, meaning not they obey you and whatever you want to do, but in terms of not rebelling anymore. If they stop their course of action from the rebelling, then God is saying you're not permitted to transgress against them. And of course, we know we have to read the Quran as a whole from cover to cover. There's strong verses that God says, do not aggress and do not oppress. Oppression is condemned, aggression is condemned. So I'll stop here. So comment doesn't get to be too long. Thanks.
I wanted to address the linguistics of this, just to put this past it, because this comes up a lot. Okay. All right, so the word darab in the Quran, it's used over 100 times, and every single time in the Quran, it has one of three meanings. One meaning is that to strike when it's used in isolation. The other one is to travel, darab fi ardi, when it says travel in the land. The other one is darab in the context of myth, as far as an example. If you apply any other of the meanings to 434, you basically get gibberish in the Arabic. So one of the arguments that typically comes up is they say, well, look, this word darab has other meanings. It's like, yeah, but so does every other Arabic word. If you look at any Arabic word, the triliteral root of it, you'll have a multitude of different meanings for that word. Quran is not a Mad Lib where we arbitrarily just start applying words to meanings to the words in the Quran. We have to be able to have a consistent approach, because this is what the Quranists do: is they apply any multitude of derivative meanings to any word and create whatever it is that they want. Surah 11 verse 12, it reads, you may wish to disregard some of that which is revealed to you, and you may be annoyed by it. Also, they may say, how come no treasure comes down to him from his or an angel? You're only a warner. God controls all things. God knows he intentionally does this, where he'll put something that is going to be controversial. This is to see who are those who are truthful, for those who in essence want to walk away from the truth. What's fascinating is if you go literally 10 verses ahead, you have two of the most kind of like famous examples of, in essence, how the scripture gets abused in this very same way. Is like some of the people were mentioning is like, look, this is a deterrent from people to commit spousal abuse. If you look, so 10 verses ahead, it says, have you noted those who received a portion of the scripture and chose to go astray? This is telling, in essence, this is literally what people do, is they look at one verse in isolation and they disregard all 6,345 other verses of the Quran. The Quran is not a single verse. It's a compilation of all the verses. If you look at the verse even before this one, right, you have 443, where it says, "O you who believe, do not observe the contact prayer salat while intoxicated." A lot of people, they interpret that to mean that when you're not doing your salat, theoretically you can be intoxicated. And that's a false understanding, because if you read Surah 5, verse 90 and 91, God says that intoxicants, gambling, the altars of idols are abominations of the devil. Now that we're laid out with the facts, we can start understanding, okay, why did God put this in the Quran? Anyone want to address that, or
Yeah,
should
I wanted to read the verse that I put In 4:128, divorce discouraged. If a woman senses oppression or desertion from her husband, the couple shall try to reconcile their differences, for conciliation is best for them. Selfishness is a human trait, and if you do good and lead a righteous life, God is fully cognizant of everything you do. So you see here, a woman's, even her sensing oppression or sensing desertion must be addressed, let alone actually being oppressed and actually being deserted. So, Brother Milad, can you come up and speak? And we can be respectful to each other. We don't need to laugh at each other's comments. No problem. I mean, I see you, all caps, LOL, like, wow, like, it's all good, man. We can just talk about it. No problem. Just come up and speak.
It's interesting because, again,
yeah, hi, can I speak for a second?
On this.
Hi, Brother Naveed. Hello?
Yeah, go for it. Let's all just be respectful, to be honest.
Okay, I understand, but you're kind of being biased as well, because when I posted the video about the wife beating, everyone was like laughing at the video, and you didn't say anything. But when I laugh at something that someone says,
I didn't see anything. I didn't see anyone laughing at the video.
But you pay really close attention to what I say, which is like very, very strange.
Yeah, I just didn't. I'm telling you, I didn't see anyone's reaction to the video.
Okay, no problem.
But do you want to make a comment on this?
Yeah, do you want to comment on this?
I'm currently at work and I can't speak a lot on the phone, but I'll listen in, and then if I can make a comment, I'll do it through the comment section.
Okay.
I just want. Go ahead. Do you want to? I can wait, Brother Dude, if you want.
It's all good.
Okay, thanks. I was going to say that people can so understand and misinterpret this verse, because people can think that, okay, God is saying that wife beating is allowed because it says then you may, as a last alternative, beat them. But instead, God is saying, because, we know that domestic violence is a big problem and people beat women for no good reason. And God here is saying, not only can you not beat women for no good reason, but even in the case of rebellion, when a woman is rebelling against her husband, against the marriage, even in that case, God is saying, first talk to them, then desert them in bed. And if one takes the appropriate steps, it shouldn't get to that point. And we have the example in the Quran of governor's wife in Surah 12, where she is seducing her servant. And the governor sets that kind of example where he just talks to her and says, you've committed an error, you should seek forgiveness. So it's actually the opposite, that people say, people may think, Quran allows this, but it's actually the opposite, that God is really protecting the women and saying, even in this extreme situation of a woman rebelling, take these alternatives rather than beating her. Thanks.
So, you have to take in the other verses. You have to read the whole Quran in context. And I believe that worse than murder is...
Brother Jeff, we cannot understand you, unfortunately. Brother Jeff, we cannot understand you. I'm sorry.
I wonder why.
I really wish this wasn't the case. Go ahead, Brother Dude, you were talking.
Yeah. I mean, the aspect, again, I just want to hammer this point, like linguistically, again, the term darab is used numerous times throughout the Quran, probably over like 70 times. I'm just doing a quick glance. Every single time, if it's anything other than these three, you need to be able to provide some sort of proof for that. That's what people do, is they gravitate towards some archaic definition of this root. They say, this is what it means. But the aspect is like, okay, what about every other occurrence of this word in the Quran? You apply any of the other definitions that the Quran provides for darab, again, you end up with gibberish. The concept is, you have to ask, okay, why is God putting this inside the Quran? The reality is, if you look at the stats, this is interesting. 1 in 4 women suffer from some sort of a domestic abuse, not necessarily regularly, but they have. Also, 1 in 7 men do as well. this thing is not kind of a one-sided aspect. I mean, I know people firsthand who had spouses, female, that basically abused them. And it's not one of these things that, in essence, is 100% on one side, but God is putting a resolution in the Quran on how to deal with these kinds of things. Because again, the Quran is not a single verse; it's a compilation of 6,346 verses. We can make the same argument for slavery, for instance. There is no verse in the Quran that flat out prohibits slavery. It actually gives all kinds of regulation and laws around slavery. Does that mean that God condones slavery? No. Slavery is something that, in essence, it's so ingrained inside a society that it has to be phased out. And it's the same thing when you're dealing with people's domestic kind of actions. God is sensitive in the sense of, okay, how do you institute a system that phases this out? And you see this consistently with God's system. It does it with intoxicants, it does it with bad language, it does it with slavery, and it does it with spousal abuse. It's all the same.
Mashallah, I see it the same way that, for example, with the slavery, that it's phased out. It's phased out. But it's interesting because with God's messenger of the covenant, it's phased out because what does the footnote said? God prohibits wife beating. There you have it, phased out.
There's a premise in the Quran. You are prohibited from ever being an aggressor, period. Because God does not love the aggressors. God hates aggression. If all of a sudden someone thinks that they read this verse and it gives them justification to aggress against their spouse, they're wrong. And that's because it creates a contradiction in the Quran. No different than when it says, have you noted those who received a portion of the scripture and how they choose to stray? This is exactly what the Taliban does. This is what Boko Haram does. They pick one verse in isolation without any context, and they try to create this overbearing kind of ruling that conflicts with numerous other commandments within the Quran.
MashaAllah. I wanted to just mention those verses in case anybody wanted to look at them. Surah 12 regarding the example of the governor. It's Surah 12 verses 29 and, sorry, Surah 12 verses 28 and 29. And then about aggression is Surah 2 verses 190 to 190, where the end of it says, God does not love the aggressors. And 2 193, aggression is permitted only against the aggressors. So as a way of essentially self-defense or to eliminate oppression. Thanks.
I mean, it would be good to hear opposition to any of this because, again, if we're wrong in some matter, then someone should enlighten how we're wrong and be able to provide Quranic justification for it. If someone is just disregarding because it's inconvenient, they're annoyed by it. It's like this is a lot of the Quran is written in such a way. I mean, take the example of Muhammad. Muhammad was commanded to marry the divorced wife of his adopted son, and he didn't want to do it. The reason is because again, there's a cultural stigma with doing such a thing. But God puts us in these situations to see those who are truthful from those who, in essence, are just giving lip service. The second, the Quran says something that we find inconvenient, we start disregarding what's actually stated, start making all kinds of caveats. Right? To me, it's showing that we're not willing to be firm with God. God puts us in the Quran, we accept it, but we have to understand why He put it in there. Again, if you look, this is the whole point is for those who are either trying to find fault with the Quran, to go after these kinds of verses, try to say, oh, God is the most gracious, God is the most kind, that God allows aggression and basically creates contradictions in His testament. You can open it up to just general questions and comments and stuff regarding any of the verses of the Quran. If no one else has anything to say about this. This
I think, I think since it's recorded and the chat is not visible, I think it's important to get this in the audio as well, God willing. It's the fact that I think Sonar provides a very good argument here. Let me find what he was saying. He says, in this verse, step 3 means doing it as a last alternative. This makes beating unlawful. Pork can also be eaten as a last alternative, but that doesn't make it lawful. So he's giving the example of pork here. If anyone has that verse, which verse was that exactly? Which said, if you can't find anything to eat, you may eat pork. It's the same type of language as in this verse. So he's making that analogy. I think that was important to get in the recording.
Thank you.
I have a question that's kind of related to the verse or the concept that you were just talking about, brother dude. But it's also like a different verse in the Quran where it's basically talking about slavery. You know, I guess this is one of the things that's maybe for us in the times that we live in, a concept that could make people uncomfortable. But as believers, like, we still try to gain understanding. So I'm interested to know how you guys interpret the verses in the Quran that talk about slavery.
I'll give take a stab at it. There's a lot of things that are flat out against God's system that are so ingrained inside society that if you try to remove it all at once, you actually are going to disproportionately impact the ones that are being affected the most. This happened in the U.S. and we're still suffering from it. Where in essence, they said, look, slavery is abolished. And then all of a sudden, what happened to all those people who were slaves the previous day? They become second-class citizens. They get discriminated against. Have to create a system by which these things are willfully phased out of society where it doesn't victimize those very people that you're trying to help. There's this tendency in essence to just say, hey, they should just, kind of do away with it, but they don't realize the ramifications of such things. And slavery is the same way. It's like when you read the concept of a slave, the word for it is abd. Abd has the reference of a slave to serve. It's also what we call ourselves in relation to God. God is our Rab, our Lord, and we are his slaves, his servants, abd. If you're going to call someone else your servant, your slave, in essence, you're creating this dynamic that God has with us. God creates a system inside the Quran by which this is phased out. I'll give you a very simple example. If you have a slave, so let's say the Quran came down, there's people, they have slaves, they need it for their economic viability. God in the Quran says that if one of your slaves wants to be married, not only do you have to grant them their freedom so they can get married, you have to pay them in order so they can go get married. You think, how long could slavery sustain under such a principle? Realistically, it's like anytime someone comes of age, since they're going to say, I want to get married, and within a span of, you're talking about like 20 to 30 years, you phase it out of the entire system. This way, no one is victimized, right? Those people were previously slaves. They're not just kicked out on the street, vying for food and shelter. No, they're created a system by which they can phase out of this institution that was established. I see the Quran does the same thing with numerous other stuff. Intoxicants is another one. So God in the Quran says that intoxicants, gambling, the altars of idols are abominations of the devil. But it also says in the previous verse, do not go to your salat while intoxicated. And the takeaway from this is like, look, someone who has a drinking problem, on day one, they have to go cold turkey. And in essence, they're not going to be able to embrace this religion. So God is giving them a pass, saying, look, you do one salat, don't be intoxicated for that. But when you do two salat, don't be intoxicated for those two. And eventually you get to a point where you're no longer, God willing, consuming intoxicants.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, regarding this slavery, I was wondering, I don't know if you guys know the history with the Islamic slavery. Why do you think was it that Arabs continued this sort of slavery system for such a long time, and they still, to this day, they have a very similar version to it called the kafala system in these Arabian countries. Why do you guys think that it has continued for such a long time, even though that, Quran definitely pushed them toward, phasing it out? Does anyone have any opinion regarding that?
I think that they began going towards Satan from the very beginning, and so they were led. They were blinded to the fact that oppression is worse than murder. You can't force. I mean, look at the societies, the laws that come out of these countries. I mean, force is their middle name. They love it.
Sorry, we can't hear you, Jeff. I'm sorry. All right. Sorry.
Hey, Jeff, try to drop off and come back in and see if that fixes the audio
Yeah,
issue.
yeah. Because I've seen in pictures during the 20th century that Arabs still were, they had slaves on the boat. Literally, they were going on raids and getting black people and then selling them off. It's just horrible. These people, they say that, we believe in sort of Islam, we believe in the Quran. Whereas you don't see it at all. I don't know how they justify it. If anyone knows the history, I would love to hear it.
The thing that comes to me is they may not be following the Quran. Regarding that, that was an interesting point about the pork. The Surah 5, verse 3, it's talking about what's prohibited for your animals, the diet of themselves, blood, the meat of pigs, and animals dedicated to other than God. Then the end of the verse says, if one is forced by famine to eat prohibited food without being deliberately sinful, then God is forgiver, merciful.
May I ask a question about um the verse about the wife beating? Not do not beat your wife. I know it's changing the subject, but I just had
Well,
a
yeah,
question about.
we just read that verse. Or did you want to ask about something else? Go ahead, please.
Yes, I just want to know the verse, the part where it says, maybe I missed it when you guys were talking about it, but in their absence, can you give me an example of not honoring their husband? Like several examples of that. I know it can be adultery. Is there anything else?
Real quick before you give that, before you answer that, can I ask everyone, please look in the chat and VC1-chat and please tap interested for next week's Quran study. I just want to briefly say this. We still have another 40 minutes for this Quran study, but please tap interested and get the check mark on that next Quran study. Thank you very much. Sister Suzanne's question is examples of nishuz, is what you're asking about, rebellion. I think acts of like maybe civil disobedience, like going on strike, these kinds of things are not befitting of submitters, I guess. It's like we should talk it out. Like God says, it says conciliation is best for them. And we always know that God knows what we do not know. This is in the verse, we read it 128. It says, the couple shall try to reconcile the differences, for conciliation is best for them. And selfishness is a human trait. So we need to focus on resolving our disputes using words and upholding the commandments outlined in the Quran.
It's interesting though that this word is used only twice in the Quran. I think Navid, you linked to it. It's Surah 434 and then 4128, if I'm not mistaken, where in essence one is on the side of the man towards the woman, and the other one is on the side of the woman towards the man. And the aspect is to try to maintain, like my takeaway from this is that the objective is to try to maintain amicable relations and respect. One of the telltale signs of a divorce, more so than anything else, is contempt for the other person. They say that, you know, if they marriage counselors, when they're having these discussions, that if they see that one party has contempt, like they just despise the other party, the likeliness of them reconciling just diminishes until that emotional response is taken away. And I see that, you know, when either party is doing something that's just snide at the you know, the hope of causing affliction and pain to the other side, that just can quickly spiral out of control, and just create a positive feedback loop that just drives a huge wedge between a husband and their wife.
All right. We can talk about this or we cannot talk about this. I guess Brother Milad is just busy with work. Otherwise, we can ask him about the linguistic claims that he made in the, I guess, videos or document that was provided. If no one has any other questions on this, I don't know, Sister Sunshine asked for this verse to be read. Did you have any additional questions or comments on this verse, Sister Sunshine?
Peace and love. So, I don't have any questions, but from my understanding and from how I view it, I feel like if everyone is just focusing on being a better Muslim, then some things wouldn't even matter. So I feel like when you come into union with your husband and your wife, and y'all lay the foundation that y'all are just focusing on being a better Muslim, then the fact of the husband beating the wife and the wife going against the husband, it wouldn't even be a factor because y'all focus is elsewhere. It's not on if beating the wife is okay. And the wife has understanding that when she goes against the husband, she's not just going against the husband, she's going against Allah and she's going against the children and the foundation. And so it's like just being aware of our actions that we make as an individual, how it affects everyone else and not just ourselves. The more selfless we are, I feel like some things like wouldn't even matter. It's beautiful to listen and hear it being addressed, but I feel like when we're in these situations with our husband and with our wife, the focus should be on more of praying 5 times a day, having that discipline and fasting and doing other things that uplift the union in the community. And that's just my perspective on.
Praise God. That was very beautifully said. I really agree with your statements. It's absolutely right. If the focus is to worship God alone and be a better person, the likelihood of getting in these situations diminishes dramatically. And so this is why God guarantees happiness. I wanted to put a verse in regard to this topic. In chapter 22, verse 15, it really solidifies the position that you're articulating for us right now. This is very beautiful. Let me load the verse in here in VC 1-chat. It says, happiness now and forever. If anyone thinks that God cannot support him in this life and in the hereafter, let him turn completely to his Creator in heaven and sever his dependence on anyone else. He will then see that this plan eliminates anything that bothers him. We have thus revealed clear revelations herein, and then God guides whomever he wills. So we see that God's plan as in us upholding God's commandments, guarantees our success, guarantees our happiness, and guarantees that we will be fully supported and under a blanket protection from harm in this world by God. And this involves everything, whether it's drugs, alcohol, domestic violence, abuse, you name it, everything. When we uphold God's commandments, we are in good shape and we are guaranteed victory. So if anyone has any comments on this concept, we can bring them up now and hear your thoughts.
Mashallah, yeah, the comment by the sister, which I thought was beautiful, that focus, great reminder and reflection, focus on nourishing our soul, being a better person, being a better submitter. Since the question was asked about the examples of like honoring husbands, and I wanted to just share a couple of thoughts that so I think this is avoiding anything that kind of opposes spouse or the marriage. So whether it's even financial, like she shouldn't be like giving away their property, or I mean there's a rule for, of course, charity. We give zakat and charity, and but it she shouldn't be behind his back secretly doing things that hurt him or the marriage, whether it's financial or whether there shouldn't be any kind of betrayal. And the verse also talks about rebellion, which definition of that is like defiance or opposition. And so an act of violent or open resistance to established government or ruler, well, we know here it would be against one's husband or against the marriage, establishment of marriage, which is a divine institution. Action or process of resisting authority, control, or convention. So we know that men and women, they're equal, and so everything should be, there should be that, like it was said, mutual respect. And at the same time, I understand this rebellion in this context, like opposing or going against the marriage or the husband. Thanks.
So what do you think about the example that Muhammad's wife was talking about something, and that God informed him of what she had said?
Does anyone want to answer that question?
Stepped out for a sec. Erdem, did you have a question?
Yeah, someone asked the question. Susan, was it you? Or
Yes, brother, it was me.
yeah, she asked the question on what do you think about Muhammad got noticed of something. Can you reiterate the question, maybe?
Yes, there was a situation where one of Muhammad's wives said something that she wasn't supposed to, and then God informed him of her, saying that that's doing something in his absence.
Mm-hmm. Is that a question, more of just observation?
I'm just saying that this verse, when it says in their honor their husband in their absence. Would that be one example?
Yeah, I think that we brought up the example of the governor's wife. Like that's another one. Yeah, but these are excellent examples. One interesting thing, so that's in source 66, verse 3, regarding the prophet's wives. The interesting aspect of this is the word that's used there, where it says the prophet made a statement to one of his wives and then she spread it, is that the word used is hadith. And this is showing that in the prophet's own home, he shared a hadith with one of his wives. God is saying the fact that she spread it, not even publicly, but to another wife, she had the risk of eternal hell. Now, we're supposed to believe that the prophet's wife Aisha, she has the second longest list of hadith attributed to her after Abu Huraira. She was going around like a chatty Cathy, telling all these intimate details of the prophet's lives. The absurdity of this is like should be glaring. There's no way she was going around, circulating all these hadith, these statements from the prophet, based on this testimony alone from the Quran. So it's an interesting kind of take, because God doesn't tell us, and it's not important, right? What was it that the prophet prohibited that he just to please his wives in Surah 661, and what was the statement that she spread? And when God doesn't tell us this information, typically it's because it's not pertinent to our understanding, that the lesson is somewhere else. That's kind of what I take from this lesson is, Susan, is kind of, you mentioned that one, that this is showing that an example of dishonoring, a husband in his absence, and then secondly, the aspect that the prophet's wives would not be going around sharing all these hadith about the prophet and the intimate affairs that took place inside their homes.
The thing that he prohibited, maybe it was donkey meat. I'm just joking.
I'm leaning towards garlic.
Yeah, we have hadith on garlic and donkey meat, right?
Oh, we got hadith up the wazoo. We got hadith against donkey meat. We got hadith against garlic. We have hadith for the killing of lizards. We have hadith for the saving of lizards. We have hadith for the killing of snakes. Hadith for the saving of snakes. I was reading one yesterday. It was saying that during the I mean, this is all nonsensical, but it's funny. In Bukhari, the prophet gave a sermon talking about how everyone should go and kill lizards. Then he took it back later, and then he had another one where he went and said everyone should go kill snakes. He took it back later.
Just willy-nilly. Just going willy-nilly.
So bad.
Just real quick, for all the submitters on the line, we want to have a submitter meeting, very important. If you could stick around after the study in 25 minutes, we have an agenda, God willing. So if the submitters can just stick around after the Quran study, 25 minutes, we have some items to go over. We would really appreciate everyone's input. Sister Samantha's put a lot of work and effort into compiling different concepts and to addressing the agenda. So if you could just stick around after the Quran study in 25 minutes, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Is that just on this chat or somewhere else?
Honestly, that might be TBD. We might push it to VC3 or something. But I don't know if Sister Samantha, do you want to speak on this briefly? Are you available? Just let the submitters know what you've been working on so hard. Okay, it looks like she just might be stepped away for a moment. So when she comes back, she'll just give us a brief synopsis of what she has planned. But basically, for the submitters, if you could just stick around after 25 minutes. So we can go back to the topic at hand or any other topic. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the concepts that were discussed today or any other verses that are in question, you can ask about any verse in the Quran at this point. Oh, it looks like Sister Samantha's back. Sister Samantha, can you hear me?
Peace. Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. We're not getting into any details right now, but just real quick, and you've been making a lot of effort. Just can you let the submitters know on the general kind of we're having an agenda that you worked on really hard, and if we can get everyone to come to the meeting in a half hour for that. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so basically, we wanted to talk about just the direction of Discord other than Quran studies, debating like how can it be a little bit more structured moving forward for, you know, newcomers, people visiting, or even, you know, more well-versed submitters and how they can be properly utilized on the server. Willing.
Right, that's the general gist of it, but I think there's many components that you were talking about. So God willing, yeah, just if the submitters can hang around in a half hour, that'd be great. And so we can decide, we can just, inshallah, we can move it to either VC3 or the submitter VC. No problem. So we can determine that at the time. That's not an issue. And we can just move everyone really easily.
I wanted to make a comment. It's tangential to this discussion regarding the understanding of the Quran. One of the inevitable outcomes is if we start just miscellaneously applying meanings to words and changing the fundamental of what's being stated in the Quran. At what point do you say you really have no foundation? What's the purpose of following a book if I can apply whatever meaning or interpretation or extrapolation from it? If I want to make intoxicants permissible, I can, twist it. I want to make adultery permissible, I can twist it. I want to make, wife beating permissible, I can twist it. The second we start going down that path, then anyone who's honest with themselves realize that there is no book left after that. And what's interesting is you see these people who are Quranists who take this to the 10th degree, and I'll give you some examples. So some of them say, look, the earliest manuscripts of the Quran didn't have the dots. So if any word has the same morphology, right, with different orientations on the dots, not only can you get all the derivative meanings of that one word that it's meant to be, but any other word that is again, if you change the dots, that forms, you can take that interpretation as well. And some people, they go further and they say, well, look, maybe some of these words were actually synonymous and we can use the synonym as opposed to the original. Eventually you go far down enough and you realize, like, okay, what are you left with? And I think, the honest Quranist has to realize that as they go down that path, realistically, they don't believe in the Quran. They don't believe in this book. That's a natural kind of like progression. No different than the honest atheist would have to admit that the world is nihilistic is the proper lens by which you should view the world. Because there's this disconnect, something keeps them from going to that logical conclusion. You are seeing individuals who start out in the sense, let's say they're a submitter, that they turn into a Quranist, and eventually they turn into on par to either theist or atheist. And I think it's because of that slippery slope. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I've seen that actually happen. Like Quranists mass, like turning atheist, deist, some even Christian, because it's too much chaos in Quranism. Regarding this verse is one good example actually. If you've seen the proofs of messengership, it's only a couple of logical deductions you can make, right? That you need to realize that you need to follow this messenger's translation. See, because verse 21:10 says, "We have sent down to you a scripture," right? This is Muhammad, right? "We have sent down to you a scripture containing your message. Do you not understand?" So this Muhammad got a scripture containing the message. That's one. The second verse is this. 592, you shall obey God and you shall obey the messenger, right? And beware. If you turn away, then know that the sole duty of our messenger is to deliver the message efficiently. Right? So Muhammad needs to be obeyed. He's delivering the Quran, and the Quran contains the message and his job. But the job of every messenger, because it says the sole duty of our messenger is to deliver the message efficiently. So every messenger's sole duty is to deliver the message, right? So but Rashad was a messenger, so we need to deliver the message. Now then we get the third verse here, 14:4. It says, we did not send any messenger, except to preach in the tongue of his people, right? So this means that, in order to clarify things for them, so this means if Rashad is a messenger, the only logical deduction is, because it says any messenger, right? We did not send any messenger except to preach in the tongue of his people in order to clarify things for them. This means that if Rashad is a messenger, he needs to do it in the tongue of his people, the place he lived, which would be United States, which would be English. So if you just take these three verses together, Quran contains the message. Sole duty of a messenger is to deliver the message, and every messenger does it in his own tongue. So only from these verses alone you can deduce that that was part of his duty. That was his sole duty, actually, is to translate the Quran. And then if you look at the verse that you shall obey God, you shall obey the messenger, and beware if you turn away. Know that his sole duty was to deliver. Know that the sole duty of our messenger is to deliver the message efficiently, which means that this is a sole duty and we need to obey it. Just like how Muhammad came with Arabic Quran, and you need to obey that Quran. Rashad, as a messenger, came in a different tongue, delivered the message, and you need to obey that message, the authorized translation. So it's a very logical deduction only from these three verses alone. I'm not even using the verses he gave, right? But you have other verses to support this. There's no way that if you believe Rashad is a messenger, if so, let me say it like this: if you believe Rashad is a messenger after you've seen the proof, and you're still in doubt what to do, like how to, and these three verses need to be put in perspective. So yeah, that verse does say what it says, but it's also important to realize that, you know, according to verse 14:4, which says need to clarify things for them. So he also clarifies the thing there said, so which is the prohibition part, right? The footnote. So it's very important to realize that. Yeah, that's who is the messenger? So Lehib asked the question: who is the messenger for Turkish people then, or any community that does not speak English? I mean, if you got a Turkish messenger, then these verses would apply. But we got a messenger going to the United States now, so or we had them, right? So he needed to translate into English. Because I mean, if you just look at the verses, very, very, very open. And you know, I can't remember which verse it was, but there was this one verse which said, God sends messengers through whom humans and angels, and God is in control of all things. He knows their past and future. So yeah, I mean that's also speaks for itself, right? Controls his messengers. So go ahead, Jeff, please.
Oh, mashallah. No, I love that. That was really good. I just wanted to emphasize it that I think when people look at Dr. Khalifa's translation and marginalize it for some reason, well, I didn't get this quite right. I think they're looking at what a messenger is wrong. In fact, they I don't know. I don't know what they do, but it seems like they put the wrong role of the message. See, it's not the messenger. God is delivering information to us. He has nothing to do with it. There it is. There's the information from God's translation. It's not Rashad's. God controls the hearts and the minds of everyone. And what is it? It's information. I mean, it's in English. You can read it. You can discern. You can get information. It's from God. The messenger was just a vehicle to get it to us. I just wanted to emphasize that.
MashaAllah. And I thought of another verse. I think that's also very interesting in this context. Which verse? 26, 200. 26, 200. Now look at this verse. We thus render it, the Quran, like a foreign language in the hearts of the guilty. You know, you need to look at the perspective from the previous verses as well, of course. I mean, 198 through 201, let's say it like that. So if we revealed this to people who do not know Arabic and had him recite in Arabic, they could not possibly believe in it. We thus render it like a foreign language in the hearts of the guilty, thus they cannot believe in it, not until they see the painful retribution. So we have the message of Arabic translated into English by a messenger. I mean, it's literally in the word, right? We have the message of the Arabic translated into English by the messenger, right? The message. So, but if you look at verses 26, 198, and 201, we see it's interesting. It says, if we revealed it, right, to the Arabs, if we revealed it to Arabs in non-Arabic, they couldn't believe in it, right? We thus render it like this in the hearts of the guilty. This is exactly what Quranism is stumbling with. So they cannot believe in it because it's rendered like a foreign language in their hearts. Because they're reading it in a language that they don't know, that they're not really in. Right? Exactly what this verse is talking about.
One more point I would like to add to that is that it's become my understanding through comments from Dr. Khalifa said in his in the submitters' perspectives that there has been a significant amount of drift in the Arabic language to where it requires going to the English translation to understand the Arabic because it's just not understood. That it's been polluted with cultural understandings, political understandings, customs, and this stuff has entered into the language in Arabic as well. And I mean, it's obvious. You can see how in the society they read it, they read the Quran, and then they come up with the societies they have. What's going on there? I mean, they're reading the Quran and they come up with this. Yes, they pollute it with hadith as well. That's a big problem, but they do have the Quran. And I think it's important to emphasize that Dr. Khalifa has says that the English translation is better to understand the message from God than the Arabic because of this.
I think that to add, so I think, mashallah, that's a good point about the messenger, that we know there's a verse that talks about that's a way that God communicates with us, is through a messenger. So I think the wise thing is to really focus on the message. That's what's going to help us and really help us to save our souls, is the message. And now, about the question about the Turkish people, Quran is our messenger. So we don't have a live human messenger, but Quran is our messenger based on multiple verses in the Quran that we've discussed before. So that's what we follow. Of course we believe in all the messengers, and we follow all the messengers, and the practices have been passed down through them. In terms of Brother Dude's question about the Quran, I'm reminded of Surah 56, verses 77 to 79, that talks about the Quran. This is an honorable Quran, in 56:77, in a protected book. None can grasp it except the sincere. So that's the key to understanding the Quran. If someone is not sincere, they're not going to understand it. They're not going to be able to grasp it. And then we know that Surah 3, verse 7, that people can take things out of context, multiple meaning verses, for example, to create confusion and to extricate a certain meaning. So these are some factors, I think.
I thank you so much for that comment. I really invite you, Sister Fari, to come during the daily discussions. We're on here every day on Discord. As for everyone else, please join our daily discussions. We really have It's where you really get to see our ideas being tested, on the battlefield of ideas. And I wanted to comment on this. I really agree with what the point you made that, people take the multiple meaning verses and extricate a certain meaning, this and that. But what we're witnessing now, I think, is just fundamentally different. We're not talking about multiple meaning verses. We are talking about straightforward verses being twisted, right? So straightforward verses. For example, it says you fast during the month of Ramadan. That's a straightforward verse. Ramadan is not a multiple meaning word, but they're taking these straightforward verses and straightforward words and changing them into multiple meaning words. You see, things are going in a fundamentally different direction. It says the meat of pigs is prohibited. That's straightforward. It's not a multiple meaning phrase. But they're saying, no, this means rotten meat. And so if we clean the pork, it's acceptable. So we're in a whole new era of twisting the Quran. And so it does fundamentally come down to if we're reading the Sijin or we're reading the Eliyin. The Eliyin is the book of the righteous. They're both numerically structured books. They're both in the Quran. But one of them sends you to hell, and one of them can send you to heaven. The Eliyin is for the righteous, and if you uphold that scripture, you're going to heaven. But if you uphold the Sijin, that's the book of the wicked, and you will go to hell. This is what's happening right now. As Brother Dude mentioned, you can change any verse in the Quran at this point. You can find linguistical excuses and reasons to try to twist any verse. It's not even about multiple meaning or straightforward verses anymore. They take all verses and twist them and create a diverted, perverted, deviant understanding of any verse. And so it becomes a different book at that point. We're really not even talking about the physical characteristics of the Quran at this point. We already all agree the Quran has 6,346 verses. Now we enter the realm of what even is the Quran? What even is the message of the Quran? Because now people are just deriving whatever they want of it. Satan is very sophisticated in his approach. This is a whole new era that we're just not familiar with. So to witness this, I really invite people to come in our daily discussions on this server in VC1 and VC2. And we really encounter these kind of situations regularly. It's fascinating to witness in real time. Thank you, everybody.
Someone say anything? So that begs, I want to say that begs the question, what would be then an example of a multi-meaning verse that people twist?
There's many. I mean, twists in which way? That's, I guess, there's some multi-meaning that just create weird interpretations, and then there's ones that create, wrong prohibitions and what's permissible.
I would say in that verse in itself, you see a mushabahat, a multiple meaning. The where you put the period after, the true meaning is only with God is very important. So the traditional understanding is that they put it after, only God knows, but we put it after God and the people of knowledge. Okay, so I think in itself, we see an example right there in that verse. What do you guys think?
Are you talking about verse 318?
Yeah, I think it's the same.
No, he's
verse.
talking about 3:7. No, he's talking about 3:7.
I think
it says none knows. It says none knows the true meaning thereof except God and those well found in knowledge. He's saying the traditionalists and many Quranists, they put the period at that point. They say none knows the true meaning thereof except God. Period.
Oh wow! So even they do it even with this verse, huh?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a mix. It's not in the sense like every traditionalist puts it there. It's just like linguistically, you could put it either spot. And there's ambiguity as far as where you put the period. It's actually one of the genius things of God sending a messenger who translated the Quran in English, because there are certain things that, say, for instance, in the Arabic are going to be ambiguous, that people, for 1,400 years have been debating. And by having an English offset, in essence, we can say, okay, where's God's messenger say, for instance, the period in this verse occurs? The other side is there's words in the English translation, again, could be multi-meaning. And then if you go to the Arabic, it basically gives clarification on that as well. And this happens like in contract law. Sometimes they'll have like the contract in two different languages. Oftentimes this settles disputes because in one language these might be multi-meaning, but then in the other language it's very cut and dry.
It's really interesting. We've seen an example of this of the verse in regards to Jesus. It says, he will speak with them from the crib as well as an adult. So what does that mean? Does that mean he spoke to them in the crib as well as an adult can speak? Or does it mean he spoke to them from the crib and also spoke to the people as an adult? In English, both of these work. This is a multiple meaning sentence in English. But if you check the Arabic, it says no. He speaks to them in the crib, and he speaks to them in time of maturity, which would be the latter description in English. You see? So this is interesting how we witness this, like as the brother said, both in English and in Arabic. We see multiple meaning verses. And so in this context, it would be helpful to look at the Arabic. We see this. I mean, this is something we've been talking about with a lot of other submitters. It's like, look, there are verses that in the English language are words that have multiple meanings. How can you claim, for example, to know exactly what the translator, Rashad in this instance, intended? And we have many examples where he's used the first definition of a word or the second definition of a word. And so in these instances, it is extremely informative and helpful to look at the Arabic and know which one it is. I can give another example of this. The ultimate prayer. This is a big one. It comes up a lot. If someone could load that verse about the ultimate prayer, I don't know if you have a chat. This is in VC1-chat. In chapter 10, verse 10, this verse has been loaded up in the chat. It says, their prayer therein is, be you glorified, our God. Their greeting therein is peace. And their ultimate prayer is, praise be to God, Lord of the universe. Not looking at the Arabic, I always assume that this means it's just the best prayer. It's the best thing you can say. But when I looked into the Arabic, I saw that no, this actually means the final. Ultimate can mean highest, best, or final, among others. And when we look at the Arabic, it's what is it? Wa'akharu means the final prayer. So ultimate as in the last.
There's also another.
Yeah.
There's a clever play on words in this verse itself. Each one of these words, their prayer therein, their greeting therein, their ultimate therein, has two meanings even in the Arabic. So the one where it says their prayer, their dawa means prayer, but it also means invitation. Word for greeting, hayya means greeting, and it also means their life. Then akhar means in essence their final, but it also means the hereafter. It's like in essence it's this very kind of a clever play on words. Or how do you encompass that in say a translation? And there's other verses that do this where God uses kind of these play on words that has a metaphorical meaning, and then it also is insinuating something else as well. But yeah, this one's particularly interesting in that regard.
Can I add, from my perspective, I feel like it's God knowing where we are in our life. Like some people were born Muslim, and then some people were born Christian and different things. And so it's like coming into learning the Islamic teaching, God knows where we are. And so if God was to say, this is final, that's it, that's all, to someone who wasn't born into the Muslim teaching, it could automatically give that person pushback and say, well, no, this isn't for me. And they just automatically cut it out, when it's like God has to use smaller words to like keep you not interested. It's not, don't want to use the word manipulating, because it tends to have a negative attachment to that word, but at the same time it's like God meeting us where we are in order for us to keep growing. And it's kind of like when you watch a movie the first time, you may notice certain things, but my ear is ringing. But then when you watch it again, you start noticing other things within that movie, and it has a deeper meaning in the movie, and you're like, oh, I understand this, which as the first two times you may not have understood it. And if it had been just plain, this is what it is, then you may have been like, oh no, this isn't for me, and just completely shut it off. And God doesn't want you to shut him out. And so he just understands. It's kind of like when you parent your children, each child is different. And so you can't parent your child how you want to parent your child. You have to parent your child based on their personality and how they are. Some people, you could tell them this is final and they say, okay, I understand it, I'm with it, let's keep going. And then other people is like when you're too authoritative towards them, they automatically push back because they are natural born rebels. So it's like God is just meeting us where we are on our journey to bring us closer to him.
What wonderful comments, mashallah.
Mashallah, that's very interesting. And what particularly what were you referring to, sister? Like, are you talking about the different like the verses in the Quran, or what were you referring to in your comment?
I was referring to the play on words and how in English it may be spoken to us one way, and then in another language it may have a different meaning based on that language and things like that. So it's like me, for example, I don't know any other language but English, but it's like as I learn more about the Islamic teaching, I am going to jump into the translation in other languages, and when I learn the meaning of it, then it's like it's opening my eyes to understand. But it had to come to me in English because that's what I know. And so as I continue to go and take steps forward, then I'll understand on a deeper level what was presented to me at first.
Thank you for
answer your question?
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think there can be like different some of the verses can have different levels, and sometimes that's why God perhaps encourages us to read the Quran. That's one of the reasons perhaps to read the Quran from cover to cover and read it again and again, that we may get different levels of meaning and get deeper as we continue reading. I just wanted to quickly, if Sister Suzanne is still on, yeah, it looks like I wanted to just, regarding her question, just quickly wanted to share my input. I'm not sure whether this example of like the wife spreading the statement, because 434 is pretty strong. It talks about rebellion. And so I don't know if that really fits with that. And we see that he talked to her. Now, later on, it talks about if the two of you band, 66:4, it says, but if you band together against him, so that I think would be rebellion. Like, the wife banding together with others against the spouse, I think that would be a form of rebellion. Just wanted to share that. Thanks.
God bless you, sister. That was amazing. We really appreciate your contributions today. We really hope you come back every day for our discussions whenever you have time, Sister Sunshine. And also Sister Sunflower asking a lot of good questions and sharing excellent insights. That's wonderful. Everyone's free to hang out here and just keep talking. For the submitters that are involved in the agenda, I want to ask the submitters to please join the submitter VC so we can go over the concepts that Samantha was talking about. So please, the submitters, join the submitter VC, and I can start moving people there as well. But everyone else can keep talking. Thank you.
We'll just start moving people. Peace be upon you.